Hello and welcome to Full-Time Live. Sammy here, joined by Jack Kelly,
Hello, everyone.
and hoping to make as much of an impression on his full-time debut as Fabio Carvalho did on the pitch today. Dan Cook, how you doing, Dan?
Good, thanks, guys. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Well, obviously not a great result. Jack, who cares is my first question.
I think Parker will care because of his pride.
Yeah.
But, he didn't put on Mitrovic. Started Fabio Carvalho, which I thought was a really good move. Really exciting, one for the future. And I care about this club a lot. But when you're relegated, you can sort of put your feet up and watch us in the yellow shirt for the final time. And, we lost to a Southampton team who I don't think are above average this season. I guess it just shows that if we were in a different situation, if we were in a situation where we could have stayed up today, or we're still in the race, I think we could have got a result. But just a poor season, and we'll go on for next season. We'll look on.
Yeah, keep your comments coming in throughout. We'll read as many as we can out. I'm going to start this one off from Elizabeth Barnard. Dan, I'll go to you. No analysis, only Carvalho tearing up the championship next season. Exactly my thoughts. What a great debut for the lad. Fair play.
Oh, spot on. It was great to see, because I think me and Jack were talking about it. It's been really good to see how well our youth teams have been doing, especially over the past couple of seasons, to finally see another player sort of post Sessegnon to come into the team and make an impact. I think that was fantastic. And he really did look like, if he was given a chance in the championship next season, he could make things happen. I thought he stood up ahead of Cavallero today. I thought Lookman was fine when he came on, but I thought he did look like our biggest attacking threat, Fabio, today. And that was really, really good to see.
Already getting the positive comments here, Dan. Drew Healy saying your debut's going better, in fact, than Carvalho's starting debut. I mean, that is high praise indeed, considering he just scored a Premier League goal. Jack, I think the future's really exciting for Fabio, and I think there's been one negative. There have been lots of negatives this season, but one other negative of this season is the fact that no youngsters have really kind of come through the books. So to see Fabio Carvalho not just play well, but actually, finish that really nicely from it was a good pass from Decordova-Reid, but it was a lovely finish. In off the bar. That's just wonderful to see. And do you see him doing well next year in the Champ?
Yeah, I think he has to have some sort of place in and around the squad. If you look at him as a winger / a 10, you've got TC, you've got Cabano, you've got AK, Cavallero, Knockout, who I don't think will play any part next season. So yeah, he should be in and around it. And obviously, getting youth into our team, I said this on Wednesday to Joe, we shouldn't make too many signings for next season and focus on really bringing in the likes of Fabio, Jasper. Stansfield could play his part. I mean, the under-18s won the Premier League today. And that's something to really be excited about. Maybe not necessarily for next season, but definitely for the future. And it just goes to show that what a wonderful youth setup we do have at Fulham. And it's been disappointing over the last 3 or 4 years. We haven't really seen the fruits of that. But today was a big stepping stone for us, and a very proud moment for the academy, and a proud moment for Fabio.
Getting away from... Oh, go for it, Dan.
I was just going to say that I think one of the things that's been mentioned before as well is that in the past sort of 4, 5, 6 seasons, we've always been battling for something, whether it's trying to stay up or trying to get promoted, which has meant it's never given us an opportunity to play players like Fabio Carvalho and then Sylvester Jasper, Stansfield, or people like them beforehand. So I think it is a really good opportunity to finally give that bit of progression to some of the really promising youngsters that we've got.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd love to see another youngster or two potentially in the next couple of games. I guess Carvalho has been in and around the first team for such a long time, and COVID rules are still in place. It's not as easy just to kind of move people between teams as it maybe once was. But it would be nice if there was a way, potentially against Newcastle with fans at Craven Cottage, for us to at least see maybe another youngster as well. Getting away from the positive, which was clearly there from Carvalho, Dan, Jamie Faulkner says, I can't watch Parker Ball for another season. It was negative again. It was little to watch. It brightened up a little bit in the second half once we were 2-0 down. But is this team just devoid of confidence, or is this Parker's tactics?
I think one of the things that struck me during that game when I was looking at it was that it's an issue we have had with Parker as a manager, even when we were in the Championship. We weren't the most attacking and fluid team. And a lot of the times last season, we were dug out by moments of just brilliance because we had quality in our squad. And he's shown that he can put together a good defensive unit at times today. It was poor, but and play ourselves out. But again, today we would get the ball into, in the first half, Olaraina and Harrison Reed double pivot, a little bit questionable. But then there was nothing. There's just no plan going forward. It didn't seem like, Southampton had a distinct plan. They pressed us high. If they won the ball back, then they hit us quickly. If they were playing out from the back, they'd look to go over the top of us and get in behind. Whereas we seem to get on the ball. We don't press particularly high. We don't look to counter particularly quickly if we win the ball back in our own third. We just don't really seem to have a plan of how to get forward. So it's something he's really got to work on if he's going to cut it, because, there are teams sniffing around him, things like the Spurs link, but you can't have no attacking plan if you're going to beat a team like Spurs. So it's just something he's really got to learn.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Lou says the football today was so negative. I don't think it's for want of trying the fact that we're negative. I think it's not that Parker's going out there literally saying Jose Mourinho style, park the bus, try and nick a 1-0. I think it's just he doesn't seem to have any kind of, as Dan says, methodology for us going forward. There are no attacking rhythms or plans or, positional awareness really of what to do to get the ball towards their net. It just disintegrates every time it enters the final third, and it becomes really laborious to watch after a while.
It's very frustrating. Like Dan said, I mean, even last season, just very, very slow in the build-up. And it does worry me because, I mean, we've alienated Mitrovic now, and that was most of our goals last season. And we're missing that link between the thirds to try and play in the front men, and it's always going wide, and the ball gets swung in, and it's hit the first man, or it gets headed away, and it's very tedious and it's very repetitive. And you got someone like Fabio who could probably pick up the ball from 25 yards out and maybe jink his way inside the box. There's something exciting to look forward to, but we are missing that Tom Kearney link, and now we need, for me, a new striker. If Mitrovic is going to go, or even if Parker goes, I don't know. We need someone who's going to put balls in the back of the net and someone who's going to try and link the play. I think Harrison Reed's a fantastic base midfielder. I think Anguissa's gone. Onamar can do a job for us next season, but there's a lot to be done before getting excited about next season in terms of success we could potentially have. But yeah, I'm very concerned about the lack of goals, because I could see that trend carrying on for next season, which is a huge worry.
Yeah. I think also with Parker today was that it was worrying that he didn't actually seem to know that. Personally, for me, sitting watching that, he was putting players in positions where they definitely is not their best position. I know Olaraina has played in a holding midfield role before. Mm-hmm. He's clearly not cut out for it. But I think the big one for me was Anguissa. In the first half, he's done it before. He's played Anguissa really high up, and there's no doubt he can do it. The issue is that you lose so many of his qualities by playing him so high up. His combativity, his ability to win the ball back, hold players off, bring other players into play, pick out a pass, and you just lose all of that by playing him so high up. And it was just concerning to see players playing where they probably shouldn't have been playing. And, we've had a whole season to watch them now. We know what they're good at. We know what their strengths are. And Scott didn't seem to see that.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, looking ahead to the summer, Dan, your article last week about Tony Khan got a lot of interest online, most of it positive, really, from what I saw. Josh Lloyd says here, Dan, I really enjoyed your latest article on Tony Khan. It really hits the nail on the head. If you want to read it, fulhamish.co.uk. How do you think the club needs to prepare itself to be successful in the Champ?
I think there's quite a few facets to it. I think one of the things I saw today was a lot of people say this was sort of the final straw for some people when it comes to Parker. I saw a lot of people calling for his head today.
Yeah.
But I think when we see how many players we're going to lose, if we're going to lose X number of players in that squad, to also lose your manager feels like a very, very bad move to me, because suddenly you're building from nothing. You've got a manager who comes in, he doesn't know the players. He then has to go out and find players to fit whatever system he wants to play. So I think for a start, some form of stability. You can't lose your manager and half your squad. And then I think, secondly, we finally need to, for once, plan to come out of the Championship with a view of staying in the Premier League. We can't go out again and sign 7 loan players who are good enough to get us out of the Championship and are not good enough to keep us in the Premier League. We're just stuck in this horrific loan cycle. And, we saw it today. Some people like Lookman came on, he had nothing to prove today, and he sort of looked like that today. When it gets down to it, you need people fighting, you need people playing for the club. And by just sticking ourselves on filling our squad with loan players, I know money is an issue, financial fair play is an issue. But I personally, and I'd happily say that I would take a couple of extra seasons in the Championship if it meant we had a stable base to give ourselves a crack at staying in the Premier League. You look at what Norwich have done. They went up, they had a squad that wasn't good enough for the Premier League, but they built on it, they prepared for life in the Championship, and they probably will give it a much better go this time. And I think we have to look at doing something along those lines of finding a stable base.
The only thing I slightly disagree on is that I think the longer you stay in the Championship, I think harder to build a squad that can then compete in the Premier League. The way that the money just drops off season after season after parachute payments, we talk about long-term planning, and I kind of see the logic behind it. But ultimately, if we're down here for 3 years in the Championship and we'll lose players season after season and trying to build it with less and less money, it does get a lot more difficult. Jack, I feel like I've really seen you change your tone in the last year or something on the ownership. I feel like you've been super, super positive. I think that's a credit to you. I think you've really tried to not be reactive, as some people made their minds up about the Khans 4 years ago. I feel like you really, really have tried to stay the course and see the positives. But I feel like when Jack Kelly's gone, we know there's a problem. There should be alarm bells ringing all over Southwest London.
I mean, I think the final straw for me was right at the beginning of the season, Aston Villa, because it felt as if Parker was completely thrown under the bus and completely undermined. And suddenly I'm thinking Tony Khan is involved with 2 other projects, and one of which is not going very well in the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it's just comedy. I wake up in the morning and I'd have Tony Khan tweets notifications on, and it's just him tweeting about wrestling. And I'm thinking, this is someone who's meant to be, passionate about the club and love his work, but he doesn't seem fully invested. And look, a lot of people have had a lot of strong opinions about Tony Khan, even back in the 18-19, and I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. We'd got promoted back to the Premier League, and I remember talking to Robbie before the Arsenal game, and I thought, oh gosh, that this is going to be a season where we could probably go one better and stay up. And I've just seen very, very similar patterns to what we've seen in 18-19. And after 3 games with Tony Khan already arguing with fans and telling we'd be happy to be a yo-yo club, it's just not what you want. And I'm a very, very passionate fan. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I think it's time now for changes upstairs. And that doesn't mean Shahid Khan. That means Shahid Khan needs to grow up and sack his son and get someone in. Roy Hodgson's about to leave Crystal Palace, and I would be absolutely delighted to get him in as director of football. Someone who knows the club inside out, someone who's passionate about the game, someone who knows what he's doing, and someone who will want the best for the club because of his tenure at the club when he was manager of Fulham. Look, whatever happens, we're going to be there next season. We're going to be supporting our club, and I just want it to be knowing that it's going to go somewhere with positive outcomes.
Yeah,
I think as well, on a final point on the Tony Khan thing as well, was that the one thing that really worried me actually in the past couple of days was we heard about this sort of fallout that they're not happy with Parker after he said that he's not had any contact with people upstairs. And they came up with this weird thing that apparently Tony Khan has put messages through Alistair McIntosh. And now that really bothered me because I think on 2 levels. One, he has to be on the phone personally. And if he's not, there's got to be a reason. And for me, what I drew from it is that almost that the communication is completely broken down between Parker and Tony Khan. I think Parker doesn't appreciate Tony Khan in the role he plays, and completely understandable. And I think in a way that you can't operate where your director of football is not speaking to your manager. And if it's got to that point where they don't speak to each other, one of them has to go. And for me, it does have to be Tony, but one of them has to.
The mad thing was, this relationship, kind of Parker and Khan 2 years ago, was what was sold to us as because Parker was a newbie and was willing to kind of work with Tony because he was new to the game and they had great communication. And within 2 years, it's broken down.
Well,
is there a manager in football that is going to work in this system? Yes, okay, Fulham is always going to be a reasonably attractive job, and there is some money and nice place to live and work, I guess. But if you can't convince, if you're losing the trust of a newbie manager after 2 years, who maybe his stock has risen, I get that, but apart from your old trusted souls like Allardyce and the like, who are going to come from club to club and take their money and run, Warnock, McCarthy, who's gonna come to Fulham? I don't know if we're going to get a respected coach.
Sammy, if you draw it back, this is Scott Parker, who has entered the managerial world, and he's got a director of football who has an ego that's so big that he will never admit to being wrong. So even when Parker was completely thrown under the bus at the beginning of the season, Tony Khan would not admit to blame, and he would go, look, COVID was this and that and that. I'm just like, shut up. And you've got someone like Scott Parker who's trying to pave his way in the managerial world, and he's being stopped and hindered in a good job at Fulham, where you just got to keep him in the Premier League and get them growing. But he's being hindered by a man who will not admit when he's wrong. And fundamentally, he didn't get the players in time. Even January, he got Madger in on deadline day, just not enough time for him to bed into the team and to make any sort of difference. But no. We've got our new wrestling promo coming out, and the Jacksonvilles are playing in London on. The more I think about it, the more angry I get, because a lot of people are saying Scott Parker's got to go, but you have to feel sorry for him, because even from September, he was put in a situation where he knew it was a complete uphill task. And that is down to a man who is side hustling Fulham and or using Fulham as a side hustle. And for me, that's just not good enough. You look at Stuart Webber at Norwich, 100% commit to the cause, got them straight back up, and they look in an unbelievable situation now.
Look at who we played today. The model, right? The model for a mid-table Premier League club. And look, they've had their problems this season, and I know that maybe Southampton's model is not something we could exactly replicate, but that's what Fulham want to become.
Yeah,
we're so far away. They plan so far ahead, and loaning out players like Mario Lemina. Like, Mario Lemina is not seen as good enough for Southampton, and Premier League clubs want him. They got rid of Harrison Reed, and whilst they seem like mad decisions from the outset, Southampton have a massive grand plan, and Fulham, Dan, have just never had that. Like, I can't remember the last time we have had that, really.
And I think there are lessons from Southampton, because they became famous pretty much for having this turnover of players where they have this ability to flip youthies, but also players they brought in for a profit to make money on them. And I saw a thing the other day that said that the only player we've made any sort of profit on in the past year, 4 years since Tony's come in, is Sessegnon, and that's because he was an academy product. And now, for me, using the stats-based way of scouting that Tony favours, which I'm a fan of, I think there's a lot of merit to it. One of the reasons for using that is to find players who you can get for a better price, who are maybe going under the radar, and then you can sell them on, and you can get money for them, and you start the cycle again. But we're bringing in players that, we have absolutely no hope of turning a profit over. How did we have any hopes of turning a profit on Ivan Cavallero when we bring him in for 15 million? Same with Knockaert. You're never going to flip a profit on those players. And suddenly, yes, you can complain about financial fair play, but if you're spending 30 million on Knockaert and Cavallero, what can you expect? We need to have some sort of plan. And if that plan is going to be using stats, you don't need stats to go out and find Cavallero, because you're playing in the same division as him for 2-3 years running. You can see that. And so there's got to be some form of plan of, right, are we going to find players like Brentford have done through stats and, picked up players for cheap and flipped them? Are we going to bring in ready products who are ready to play Premier League football when we go up? But at the moment, we're just in sort of some no man's land where we're doing neither.
This is why I guess this summer is really important, right? Because actually, and I said this on the podcast, I think the recruitment of last summer in January, yes, done too late, yes, flawed with the amount of loans that we had to make. But, someone made the point that, you buy Tosin, Tete, Robinson and Reed for under 15 million. Terrific business. We surely will make profit on most of those players.
Yeah.
But it came too late to save us, because the mistakes, as you say, Dan, were made 2 summers ago when we went down to the Championship and inexplicably just decided to buy players like Knockaert and Cavallero, who were at the peak of their powers as soon as we bought them, and were always on the way down. And we just got... what we got was like buying a car that's about 2 or 3 years old, right? That's really doing well, but it's going to be this is as good as it's going to get, and it's high value now. And we were the suckers in the showroom that went and bought it and didn't think about what we did before we bought it. And they're all Wolves and Brighton kind of rubbing their hands with glee.
You know what's mind-boggling about that is that we bought Knockaert and Cavallero on the basis that they're just good Championship players and they'll get you back because you got promoted with Wolves and you got promoted with Brighton, yeah? But these are players who are past the peak of their career. If we'd have held on to someone like Floyd Ayite, who really was coming into his own, and I watched some highlights back last night of a few seasons ago, the guy was an absolute baller. And honestly, I think Floyd Ayite, like even in the Premier League, I think he scored that 1 goal away at Leicester. I still think he could have done a better job than Ivan Cavallero, even in the Championship last season. I just think this whole, we'll pay 15 million. We'll worry about it later. We'll sign him on loan for now. Like, come on. It just doesn't, for me, make any long-term sense. And that's so frustrating from a fan's point of view, because that's money down the drain. That's FFP now put in jeopardy for next season, all because of these stupid decisions. And Knockaert's not even playing for us now. He's at Nottingham Forest, who barely didn't even get top half of Championship. It's an embarrassment, honestly.
And it's the issue with the loans as well, is that the loan to buy system is a great, Wolves have done it really well. They've brought in players on loan and then had an option to buy them if they perform well. What we've got is a more sort of loans with an obligation to buy. We loan in Knockaert. If he plays X number of games, we have to buy him. There's no real benefit to that other than pushing 15 million back 6 months. It makes no sense. We just hamstring ourselves and stick ourselves in tight situations financially.
Moving on, just having a look at next season. But I mean, this is called Full-Time Live Reaction to Fulham Southampton, but we always knew there was going to be bugger all to discuss. We'll finish it in a minute because it's the cup final and everyone's going to want to go watch that in a second. What is the squad looking like for next season? Like, what do you obviously there's going to be a few signings. We can't account for those, but kind of the spine of the side, what are you hoping to see kind of on that opening Championship day of the season? I'll start with you, Jack.
We've got a good base and we've got some exciting players who I think on the face of it, it's a stronger team if you include Mitrovic. If you include Mitrovic, it's a stronger team that started last season for obvious reasons. We've got Rodak, Tete. So my starting 11 is Rodak, Tete, Tosin, Hector / Congolo / maybe new centre-back, Brian or Robinson. And then you've got Stevie Sess, who's floating around, Cyrus Christie. Then you've got Harrison Reed, Josh Onamar, Tom Kearney, and then Bobby D. Cordova-Reid, Mitrovic and Cavallero. But again, I'd maybe get in the likes of Suzuki Dembele or a new striker if Mitrovic goes. But that, on the face of it, is a fantastic team and a very, very capable of winning the league.
What style would it play though? Like that I guess that's the issue.
We've got to play to Mitrovic's strengths if he stays, and if not, a new striker in, and we've got to be a little bit more proactive in the final third. Tom Kearney trying to unlock the door. Of course, Fabio Carvalho, who I would definitely have as a starter in the Championship. Just got to be more brave in the final third. I remember playing teams like Birmingham, we were struggling to break them down, and we can't have that. We've got to steamroll teams next season.
And I guess that's the issue potentially with Mitrovic, is if Parker just doesn't think that with Mitrovic in the team that we can steamroll teams because he's too slow, Dan. I guess that's the issue potentially. It's just one thing to kind of like break down what the kind of starting 11 is, and there are some good players in there, but what style does this play? Does all those players fit that? And I guess that's what Parker's going to kind of argue with the management, really, isn't it? It's one thing to have a good roster, as the Americans would call it, but what's the style? What's the identity? That's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really important. But I think one of the things that has confused me with Parker and that his relation with Mitrovic really sort of just getting worse and worse as the season's gone on. is that Parker still seriously does seem to have a favour towards getting the ball out wide. And now I don't see why we put an emphasis on getting the ball out wide when you're playing Cavallero through the middle. So he seems to have got twisted in his system. And I think you can play Mitrovic up top and play attacking football. It's, he just because he's not the quickest doesn't mean you can't go out and be creative and steamroller teams. He is that focal point that you can play off. But I am really worried that after sort of his treatment today, his treatment against Chelsea, where he didn't come on as well when we needed a goal, that I think he's just reached this point now where he's fed up. And he loves this club, but I think without the fans being there this season and with him being stuck on the bench, I think that love for the club's getting less and less. And if we're in the situation where we have to replace the players who were in on loan, who have to go, but also a player who scored 26 goals in the Championship, that becomes a problem because it's very difficult to find a 26 goal striker. It's hard to find a double figure striker, let alone someone who scored as many as Mitrovic did. And so I think Parker has to make a decision early of, right, is he in my plans? And if he isn't, if he's going to play a style of football that goes away from that, we have to find a striker who fits in.
Yeah. But what I can already see the situation unfolding, that we want to sell Mitrovic, but Tony Khan wants to play it out until the last day. And so we go into a season thinking that we've got Mitrovic, and then we're trying to find money, and then there's all the unrest in the air and the fans are angry. Clip this up and we'll play it in September, because I'm certain that that's going to be the case. All right, we're going to finish there because it's the cup final, and let's be honest, it's not the most fun talking about Fulham at the moment. Although there's plenty to talk about, despite us being kind of
completely
vanilla on the pitch, but off the pitch, I'll tell you what, it's rock and roll. Peter Rutster at the Athletic has never had such a fun time covering the club. He's getting scoop after scoop at the moment, and plenty going on in the madhouse that is Fulham FC. Dan, wonderful debut. Clap you off the pitch.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Been a pleasure to join you, boys.
Jack Kelly, thank you as ever.
Always a pleasure, Sammy. Thank you.
All right. Have a good weekend. Come on, you Whites.
Come on, you Whites.